There comes a moment in life when a woman who once gave endless patience, endless understanding, and endless love becomes silent inside. Not because she has nothing left to say, but because she finally understands the truth. Energy is sacred. Peace is sacred. And giving your heart to people who only consume it is a slow form of self-destruction. An empath woman carries the pain of others as if it were her own. She feels deeply. She forgives repeatedly. She stays longer than most people would, even after disrespect, even after disappointment, even after betrayal. She believes kindness can heal everything. But one day, life teaches her a lesson that changes her forever. One of the greatest mistakes people make in life is sacrificing their inner peace just to be accepted by others. They exhaust themselves trying to explain who they are, trying to defend their intentions, trying to keep everyone comfortable while slowly destroying themselves inside. An empath woman often falls into this trap because her heart naturally wants harmony. She wants understanding. She wants everyone around her to feel loved, safe, and valued. But there comes a painful realization that changes everything. You cannot build peace in your life by constantly abandoning yourself for others. The moment a woman begins protecting her peace before protecting opinions, her entire energy changes. She stops reacting to every criticism. She stops chasing approval. She stops carrying emotional weight that never belonged to her. And suddenly, she becomes stronger than ever before. People who live for opinions are never truly free. Their emotions rise and fall depending on how others see them. If they are praised, they feel worthy. If they are criticized, they feel broken. This is a dangerous way to live because it places your inner stability into the hands of strangers, unstable people, and temporary relations. A disciplined mind understands something important. Opinions change constantly. People praise you one day and judge you the next. If your peace depends on their approval, your life will always feel unstable. An empath woman often spends years trying to prove her goodness. She explains her intentions repeatedly because she fears being misunderstood. She tolerates disrespect because she wants to avoid conflict. She remains available even when emotionally exhausted because she fears disappointing people. But slowly, this behavior drains the spirit. There is no peace in constantly over-explaining yourself. There is no peace in trying to save every relationship. There is no peace in shrinking yourself so others can remain comfortable. True peace begins the moment you realize that not everyone will understand you, and not everyone is meant to. This realization is powerful because it breaks emotional dependence. The empath woman finally sees that protecting her nervous system, her mental clarity, and her emotional balance matters more than winning arguments or changing people's perceptions. She no longer wastes energy trying to convince people of her value. Why? Because real value does not beg to be recognized. A calm soul understands this deeply. The lion does not lose sleep over the opinion of sheep. A mountain does not lower itself because someone refuses to see its height. Likewise, a peaceful woman no longer allows small minds to disturb her spirit. This does not mean she becomes arrogant. It means she becomes centered. There's a difference. Centered people move differently through life. They listen more than they react. They observe more than they argue. They protect their energy because they understand how precious it is. They know that every unnecessary conflict steals time, focus, and emotional strength. Most people are emotionally attached to being understood. They feel frustrated when others misjudge them, but wisdom teaches something greater. You do not need everyone to understand your heart in order to live a meaningful life. Sometimes silence is more powerful than explanation. Sometimes walking away is more powerful than defending yourself. And sometimes protecting your peace is the most loving thing you can do for yourself. An empath woman who learns this becomes dangerous in the most beautiful way. Not dangerous through anger, but through emotional mastery. She no longer allows manipulation to enter her mind easily. Guilt no longer controls her decisions. Drama no longer attracts her attention. She begins asking herself different questions. Does this conversation bring peace or chaos? Does this relationship nourish my spirit or drain it? UK, does this environment allow me to grow or force me to suffer? And if the answer destroys her peace, she quietly steps away. No hatred, no revenge, no need to prove anything. Just distance, just awareness, just self-respect. Many people will not understand this version of her because they benefited from the old version. They were comfortable. They were comfortable when she constantly explained herself. They were comfortable when her kindness had no boundaries. But growth changes a person. A woman who once feared disappointing others eventually becomes more afraid of disappointing herself. That is the moment transformation truly begins. Protecting your peace is not selfish. It is necessary. And because without peace, the mind becomes restless. Without peace, the heart becomes heavy. Without peace, life loses clarity. And clarity is everything. A peaceful mind makes better decisions. A peaceful heart chooses healthier relationships. A peaceful spirit no longer seeks validation from people who cannot even validate themselves. This is why inner peace must become more important than public opinion. At the end of life, people will always have something to say. No matter how kind you are, someone will misunderstand you. No matter how pure your intentions are, someone will criticize you. So living for opinions is endless suffering. But protecting your peace creates freedom, and freedom allows the soul to breathe again. The strongest woman is not the one who wins every argument. The strongest woman is the one who refuses to lose herself, trying to be accepted by everyone. An empath woman has a beautiful heart because she feels deeply for others. She notices pain that most people ignore. She listens carefully when someone is struggling. She forgives when others would walk away. Her compassion comes naturally because her soul is connected to understanding rather than judgment. But there is a truth many empathetic people learn too late. Compassion without boundaries becomes suffering. At first, it does not look dangerous. It looks like kindness. It looks like patience. It looks like loyalty. But over time, constant giving without limits slowly destroys inner peace. An empath woman often believes love means endurance. She believes if she stays patient long enough, people will change. She believes if she keeps understanding others, eventually they will understand her too. So she keeps giving energy even when exhausted. She keeps showing up even when ignored. She keeps carrying emotional burdens that were never hers to carry, and slowly her spirit becomes heavy. This is what happens when compassion exists without boundaries. The heart becomes a place where everyone takes shelter, but nobody repairs the damage they leave behind. The empath woman becomes emotionally available to everyone except herself. She checks on others while silently breaking inside. She comforts others while neglecting her own wounds. She gives love to people who only return confusion. A disciplined mind eventually recognizes this pattern. Compassion should heal life, not destroy it. Kindness should bring peace, not exhaustion. If helping others constantly leaves you emotionally drained, disconnected from yourself, and mentally overwhelmed, something is deeply unbalanced. Many people confuse boundaries with cruelty, but boundaries are not cruelty. Boundaries are wisdom. A river without boundaries floods everything around it. Fire without boundaries destroys entire forests. Likewise, compassion without boundaries eventually consumes the person who carries it. An empath woman suffers greatly because she absorbs energy easily. She enters a room and feels tension immediately. She listens to pain and carries it in her chest long after the conversation ends. She notices emotional shifts in people who never even notice her own sadness. This sensitivity is powerful, but without discipline, it becomes dangerous. Why? Because emotionally unhealthy people are naturally attracted to those who constantly give without limits. They seek comfort without responsibility. They seek healing without. And an empath woman often becomes trapped in relationships where she gives endlessly while receiving almost nothing in return. At first, she tells herself to stay patient, Then she tells herself to stay understanding. Then she tells herself to stay loyal, but eventually exhaustion begins speaking louder than hope. Her body becomes tired. Her mind becomes restless. Her heart becomes numb. This is the cost of compassion without boundaries. There is an important lesson in life many people avoid learning. You are not responsible for saving everyone. Some people do not want healing. They only want access to your energy. They enjoy your presence because your kindness comforts them, but they never truly value the emotional cost you pay for constantly supporting them. An awakened woman begins noticing this difference. She notices who only comes to her during chaos. She notices who disappears when she needs support. She notices who drains her spirit while calling it love. And this awareness changes everything. The empath woman who once tolerated emotional imbalance begins protecting herself differently. She understands that saying no is not selfish. Distance is not hatred. Sometimes the healthiest form of compassion is refusing to destroy yourself for people unwilling to grow. This realization is painful because empathic people naturally fear hurting others. They often feel guilty for creating distance. They worry about disappointing people. But wisdom teaches something greater. If your compassion requires self-betrayal, it is no longer healthy. You cannot continuously pour from an empty soul. A peaceful woman understands that boundaries are acts of self-respect. They protect emotional stability. They protect mental clarity. They protect the sacred energy needed to live with balance and purpose. Without boundaries, people will take endlessly. Without boundaries, manipulation enters easily. Without boundaries, even the purest heart becomes exhausted. An empath woman becomes truly powerful when she learns how to combine compassion with discipline. She still loves deeply, but she no longer tolerates disrespect. She still cares, but she no longer sacrifices herself to prove it. She still helps others, but she understands that her peace matters too. This is emotional maturity, not becoming cold, not becoming selfish, but learning where her responsibility ends. There is strength in saying, I cannot carry this for you anymore. There is wisdom in walking away from people who constantly create emotional chaos. There is freedom in protecting your spirit before it reaches complete exhaustion. The world often praises people who endlessly give themselves away, but true wisdom understands balance. A healthy soul knows when to open the heart and when to close the door. Because not everyone deserves unlimited access to your energy. Compassion is beautiful, but compassion without boundaries becomes silent suffering. And no loving soul should have to destroy itself just to keep others comfortable. There is a kind of silence that does not come from weakness. It does not come from fear, insecurity, or defeat. It comes from understanding. It comes from emotional discipline. And when an empath woman reaches this level of silence, her entire presence changes. In the past, she explained everything. She explained why she felt hurt. She explained why she stayed loyal. She explained why certain actions affected her deeply. She believed honesty would create understanding. She believed communication would solve emotional distance. So she gave words, patience, and endless chances. But eventually, she discovered something painful. Some people understand your value only after your silence replaces your effort. This is why silence is often the highest form of strength. Not every battle deserves your voice. Not every misunderstanding deserves your explanation. Not every person deserves access to your emotions. A peaceful mind understands this clearly. Most people react immediately when emotionally triggered. They argue to defend themselves. They raise their voice to feel powerful. They try desperately to prove their point because they are controlled by emotion rather than awareness. But a disciplined woman learns that constant reaction weakens the spirit. Reaction gives others control over your inner state. The moment someone can disturb your peace easily, they gain power over your emotions. This is why silence becomes strength. It protects energy, it creates clarity, it prevents unnecessary emotional chaos. An empath woman often struggles with silence in the beginning because her nature seeks resolution. She wants harmony. She wants understanding. She wants emotional honesty. So when conflict appears, she feels responsible for fixing it. She feels responsible for repairing emotional distance, even when she was not the one who created it. This behavior slowly becomes exhausting. Imagine carrying every disagreement into your heart. Imagine overthinking every cold response. Imagine constantly trying to explain your intentions to people committed to misunderstanding you. Eventually, the soul becomes tired. And this exhaustion creates awakening. The empath woman finally realizes that silence can say what words never could. Silence reveals truth. Silence exposes intentions. Silence shows who truly values your presence and who only values your attention. Now, when you stop chasing conversations, you notice who never reaches out. When you stop over-explaining yourself, you notice who never tried to understand you. When you become silent, people reveal their true relationship with your energy. This is why silence is powerful. It removes illusion. A calm woman no longer feels the need to defend herself against every accusation. She understands that people often judge based on their own level of awareness. Some people misunderstand kindness because they only understand control. Some people misunderstand boundaries because they benefited from your lack of them. Trying to convince everyone of your purity is endless suffering. There is strength in remaining calm, while others expect emotional chaos from you. There is strength in walking away instead of reacting impulsively. There is strength in controlling the tongue when anger demands expression, because words spoken from emotional pain often create regret. Silence creates space for awareness. In silence, you observe more clearly. In silence, emotions settle naturally. In silence, truth becomes visible. An empath woman who masters silence becomes emotionally unshakable. Not because she no longer feels pain, but because she no longer allows pain to control her actions. This is a completely different level of strength. Most people think power is loud. Real power is controlled. The strongest person in the room is often the one who does not need to prove anything. This understanding changes how she moves through life. She stops arguing with people committed to misunderstanding her. She stops chasing validation from emotionally unavailable people. She stops wasting energy trying to repair relationships built on imbalance. Instead, she becomes observant. She notices actions more than promises. She notices consistency more than words. She notices energy more than appearances. And through this awareness, her silence becomes peaceful rather than painful. There is also dignity in silence. Constantly explaining yourself to people who ignore your feelings slowly damages self-respect. A woman who values herself understands that not everyone deserves unlimited explanations. Sometimes your absence speaks louder than your effort ever did. This does not mean becoming emotionally distant or cold-hearted. It means becoming emotionally disciplined. There is a difference. Silence is not suppression. Silence is control. It is the ability to remain centered even when emotions rise strongly inside you. It is the decision to protect your peace instead of feeding conflict. It is the wisdom to recognize that some people are only looking for reactions because reactions give them power. An empath woman becomes truly dangerous when she learns calm detachment. Her silence carries weight because it is no longer filled with fear. It is filled with clarity, and clarity changes everything. She no longer speaks to convince. She no longer argues to be understood. She no longer reacts to every opinion thrown at her. Why? Because she finally understands her worth does not decrease because someone fails to recognize it. This realization creates deep inner peace. The loudest people often carry the most chaos inside them. But the woman who has mastered silence carries something rare: stability, awareness, emotional balance. And nothing is more powerful than a peaceful soul that refuses to lose itself in unnecessary noise. Many people confuse love with attachment. They believe holding on is strength. They believe sacrificing themselves for connection is proof of loyalty. They stay in places that drain them because they fear being alone. They tolerate disrespect because they fear losing someone. But an empath woman eventually learns one of the most important lessons in life. Self-respect is more powerful than attachment. This realization does not come easily. It usually arrives through pain, through disappointment, through emotional exhaustion. An empath woman naturally forms deep emotional connections. When she loves completely. She invests her time, energy, patience, and heart into the people she cares about. She sees potential in others, even when they cannot see it in themselves. She forgives repeatedly because she values emotional connection more than pride. But this beautiful quality can also become dangerous when attachment blinds her to reality. Attachment makes people ignore red flags. Attachment makes people tolerate emotional imbalance. Attachment makes people stay where their spirit is slowly dying. This is why self-respect becomes necessary for survival. Without self-respect, love becomes self-abandonment. A disciplined mind understands something very clearly. Love should never require you to betray your dignity. If you constantly feel anxious, drained, ignored, or emotionally small in a relationship, something is deeply wrong. Real connection should not destroy inner peace. Okay? Yet many empathetic people continue holding on because they fear loss more than suffering. They fear silence. They fear separation. They fear being misunderstood, so they stay attached to situations that slowly weaken their spirit. An empath woman often gives endless chances because she remembers the good moments. She focuses on potential instead of patterns. She hopes effort will eventually change the outcome. But over time, reality becomes impossible to ignore. No amount of love can heal someone who refuses to grow. No amount of loyalty can force someone to value you. No amount of patience can create respect where this truth hurts deeply because the empath heart wants to believe connection can survive anything. But wisdom teaches otherwise. Relationships without respect eventually become emotional prisons. The moment a woman chooses self-respect over attachment, everything changes inside her. She stops begging for consistency. She stops accepting half-hearted effort. She stops chasing people who only appreciate her when she is leaving, and suddenly her energy becomes different, calmer, stronger, more grounded, because attachment creates emotional dependence, while self-respect creates freedom. A person controlled by attachment fears abandonment constantly. Their emotions become unstable because their happiness depends on someone else's behavior. If they receive attention, they feel secure. If they are ignored, they feel broken. This is emotional captivity. But a woman rooted in self-respect understands something powerful. Her value does not disappear because someone fails to recognize it. She no longer needs constant reassurance to feel worthy because her worth comes from within. This inner stability changes the way she loves. She still cares deeply, but she no longer tolerates disrespect in the name of connection. She still gives kindness, but she no longer sacrifices herself to keep people comfortable. She learns that love without dignity is not love at all. Many people remain attached because they confuse familiarity with destiny. They become comfortable in unhealthy patterns simply because those patterns feel known. Even pain can become addictive when the mind fears uncertainty more than suffering, but growth requires courage. Okay. It requires the courage to leave environments that damage your spirit. It requires the courage to disappoint people who benefit from your weakness. It requires the courage to stand alone rather than lose yourself trying to keep others close. An empath woman becomes truly powerful when she reaches this level of awareness. She no longer fears walking away from emotional chaos because she understands that peace is more valuable than temporary attachment. This transformation surprises many people. The woman who once tolerated everything suddenly becomes firm. Okay, the woman who once begged for honesty suddenly becomes silent. The woman who once chased connection suddenly chooses distance. Not because she stopped loving, but because she finally started loving herself too. Self-respect creates boundaries. Self-respect creates clarity. Self-respect creates emotional discipline. Without it, people will continuously test your limits. They will take from your heart while offering excuses instead of effort. They will expect loyalty while giving inconsistency. and attachment will keep you trapped in cycles that slowly destroy your confidence. This is why self-respect matters more. Cap. A peaceful woman understands that loneliness is temporary, but losing yourself can damage the soul for years. She would rather walk alone with dignity than remain attached to relationships filled with emotional confusion. There is great strength in this decision, not loud strength, not aggressive strength, quiet strength. The kind of strength that allows someone to walk away without hatred. The kind of strength that chooses healing over emotional addiction. The kind of strength that understands inner peace is worth protecting at all costs. An empath woman who develops self-respect becomes emotionally free. She no longer clings to people out of fear. She no longer tolerates disrespect because of emotional attachment. She no longer confuses suffering with love. And this freedom changes her entire life. Because the moment self-respect becomes stronger than attachment, manipulation loses its power completely. And that is where true emotional strength begins. One of the deepest forms of wisdom an empath woman can develop is understanding that not everyone deserves access to her energy. This lesson changes the entire direction of her life because energy is not something small. Energy is life itself. It shapes emotions, thoughts, peace, focus, and spiritual balance. The people around you either nourish that energy or slowly destroy it. Nukken. An empath woman often gives people unlimited access to her heart because she naturally sees good in others. She listens without judgment. She offers comfort without hesitation. She makes people feel understood in ways they have rarely experienced before. But many people mistake this kindness for endless availability, and this is where suffering begins. Not everyone who enters your life comes with pure intentions. Some people come only to consume attention, emotional support, and peace while giving nothing in return. They are drawn toward light because they carry darkness within themselves. And if an empath woman lacks boundaries, she becomes emotionally exhausted trying to save people who never intended to heal. At first, she ignores the imbalance. She tells herself to stay patient. She tells herself everyone deserves understanding. She tells herself love requires sacrifice, but over time, her spirit becomes heavy. She notices certain conversations leave her drained. She notices certain people only appear during their personal chaos. She notices she feels emotionally tired after constantly carrying the weight of others. This is not coincidence. This is energy. Every person carries emotional patterns into your life. Some bring peace, some bring confusion. Some inspire growth. Some create exhaustion. A disciplined woman learns to observe this carefully because she understands that her inner state is too valuable to place into careless hands. Most people protect money more carefully than energy, yet money lost can return. Time and peace often cannot. This is why awareness. An empath woman eventually realizes that constantly giving emotional access to everyone weakens her spirit. She cannot remain mentally clear while surrounding herself with negativity, manipulation, emotional instability, and disrespect. The nervous system absorbs everything repeatedly experienced. Chaos affects the body, stress affects the mind, emotional toxicity affects the soul. And many empathetic people ignore this truth until they are completely exhausted. There is a dangerous habit many kind-hearted people develop. They believe saying yes makes them loving, so they become available for everyone's problems. They answer every emotional crisis. They tolerate endless negativity. They allow people to unload pain onto them without limits, but slowly they lose connection with themselves. Why? Because energy given without awareness becomes depletion. A peaceful woman understands something important. Her compassion does not require unlimited access. She can care about people without allowing them to disturb her emotional balance. She can love others while still protecting her peace. This understanding creates emotional maturity. Not everyone deserves your vulnerability. Not everyone deserves your time. Not everyone deserves your emotional presence. When access should be earned through respect, consistency, honesty, and mutual care. An empath woman who learns this becomes much more selective. She stops oversharing with people who only collect information without genuine concern. She stops surrounding herself with individuals who constantly create drama. She stops entertaining conversations that leave her emotionally drained. And suddenly, her mind becomes quieter because peace grows when unnecessary energy leaves your life. Many people will not understand this transformation. They may call her distant. They may call her cold. But in reality, she simply became aware. She realized that constantly absorbing everyone's emotional chaos was destroying her inner world. There is nothing selfish about protecting your spirit. A healthy soul requires space. A healthy mind requires calm. A healthy heart requires balance. Without protection, even the strongest empath eventually collapses emotionally. This is why solitude becomes powerful for an awakened woman. In silence, she reconnects with herself. She learns which emotions truly belong to her and which emotions she absorbed from others. She begins valuing calm environments, meaningful conversations, and emotionally stable relationships. Her standards rise naturally, not from arrogance, but from awareness. She no longer feels guilty for distancing herself from negativity. She no longer forces connections that constantly disturb her peace. She no longer allows people to repeatedly disrespect her energy while expecting unlimited access to her heart. Because she understands something life-changing, the people closest to you shape your emotional reality. If you surround yourself with chaos, your mind becomes restless. If you surround yourself with manipulation, your spirit becomes anxious. If you surround yourself with peace, your soul begins healing. This is why energy protection matters deeply. An empath woman becomes truly powerful when she stops trying to rescue everyone. She understands that some people are committed to remaining lost. Some people only seek temporary comfort, not transformation. And sacrificing herself endlessly for them will not save them. It will only destroy her. So, she begins choosing differently. She chooses environments that bring calm. She chooses relationships built on mutual respect. She chooses conversations that nourish growth instead of emotional confusion. And most importantly, she chooses herself without guilt. This changes everything. Her energy becomes lighter, her mind becomes clearer, her emotions become more stable. Because when the wrong people lose access to your energy, your soul finally has room to breathe again. And a peaceful soul is one of the most powerful forces in this world. One of the most misunderstood forms. Many people hear the word detachment and immediately think it means becoming cold, distant, or incapable of love. But true emotional detachment is not the absence of feeling. It is the absence of unhealthy dependence. It is the ability to care deeply without losing yourself in the process. An empath woman often struggles with this lesson because her heart naturally forms deep emotional bonds. She feels connected to people's pain. She becomes emotionally invested in relationships, conversations, and memories. When someone she loves suffers, she suffers too. When someone becomes distant, her mind searches endlessly for answers. This emotional depth is beautiful, but without awareness, it becomes a prison. Why? Because attachment without balance creates suffering. The empath woman begins measuring her emotional state through the actions of others. If she receives love, she feels calm. If she receives silence, she feels anxious. If someone changes their energy toward her, her peace disappears completely. This is emotional captivity. A disciplined mind eventually realizes that freedom cannot exist where emotional dependence controls the spirit. No person should have the power to destroy your inner stability simply by changing their mood, attention, or behavior. This is where emotional detachment becomes powerful. Detachment teaches the soul to remain centered regardless of external circumstances. Ceases It creates space between emotions and reactions. It allows a person to observe situations clearly instead of drowning inside them. An empath woman who learns detachment stops reacting impulsively to everything around her. She no longer feels responsible for fixing every emotional problem. She no longer loses sleep trying to understand people who communicate through inconsistency and confusion. Instead, she becomes calm, not because she stopped caring, but because she stopped abandoning herself emotionally for people who refuse to meet her halfway. This transformation changes her entire life. In the past, she chased explanations. Now she accepts reality. In the past, she feared losing people. Now she fears losing herself. In the past, she attached her happiness to relationships. Now she builds peace within herself first. This is emotional freedom. Many people remain trapped because they confuse attachment with love. They believe constant emotional obsession means connection. They believe suffering proves loyalty. But wisdom teaches something greater. Real love does not destroy inner peace. Real love does not create endless emotional instability. When attachment becomes unhealthy, fear begins controlling behavior, fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of loneliness, and fear always weakens the spirit. Connect. An empath woman often tolerates emotional confusion because she hopes things will return to how they once were. She clings to memories, potential, and temporary moments of affection while ignoring painful patterns repeated again and again. But detachment brings clarity. Clarity allows her to see people as they truly are, instead of who she wishes they could become. This realization can feel painful at first because emotional detachment requires letting go of illusions. It requires accepting that some connections are not meant to continue forever. It requires understanding that forcing relationships out of fear only creates deeper suffering. But once she accepts this truth, peace slowly returns. She begins understanding that she cannot control others. She cannot force honesty. She cannot force consistency. She cannot force emotional maturity. And finally, she stops trying. This does not make her weak. It makes her wise. A peaceful woman learns that controlling her own reactions matters more than controlling people around her. She stops wasting energy chasing certainty from emotionally unavailable individuals. She stops begging for clarity from people who enjoy confusion. She stops fighting for attention from those who cannot appreciate her presence. Instead, she turns inward. She strengthens her mind. She protects her energy. She reconnects with herself. And through this process, emotional detachment creates inner freedom. Freedom from overthinking. Freedom from emotional dependency. Freedom from constant disappointment. There is incredible peace in no longer forcing life. The empath woman who once exhausted herself trying to hold everything together suddenly realizes something important. Whatever is truly meant for her will never require self-destruction to maintain it. This understanding changes her relationships completely. She still loves deeply, but she no longer clings desperately. She still cares, but she no longer sacrifices her mental health for connection. She still opens her heart, but she no longer ignores disrespect out of fear of losing. This kind of woman becomes emotionally powerful because manipulation no longer controls her. Guilt no longer traps her. Emotional inconsistency no longer weakens her spirit. Why? Because detached people cannot be emotionally imprisoned easily. Their peace comes from within rather than from external validation. This is what many people fail to understand. Emotional detachment is not about avoiding love. It is about avoiding emotional slavery. It is the ability to remain connected without becoming consumed. An empath woman who masters this becomes calm in situations that once destroyed her emotionally. She stops chasing closure from people unwilling to give honesty. She stops seeking validation from people incapable of recognizing her worth. And for the first time in her life, she experiences something rare, inner freedom. Like the kind of freedom that allows the soul to breathe without fear. And once a woman experiences that level of peace, she never willingly returns to emotional chaos again. Right? There comes a moment in every empath woman's life when she becomes tired of abandoning herself for the comfort of others, tired of shrinking her feelings to avoid conflict, tired of carrying relationships alone, tired of giving endless energy while receiving the bare minimum in return. And in that moment, something inside her begins to change quietly, not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply. This is the moment she finally chooses herself, and the moment a woman truly chooses herself, her transformation begins. For many years, an empath woman often believes choosing herself is selfish. She has been taught to prioritize everyone else's emotions before her own. She feels guilty resting while others struggle. She feels guilty saying no. She feels guilty creating distance from people who constantly drain her spirit. So she keeps sacrificing herself to maintain connection, but eventually, life reveals a painful truth. No matter how much she gives, some people will still misunderstand her. Some people will still take her kindness for granted. Some people will still expect more while appreciating less. And slowly, exhaustion becomes awakening. She begins asking herself difficult questions. Why am I always the one overextending? Why do I feel emotionally empty after helping everyone else? Why do I continue abandoning my peace to protect people who would never do the same for me? These questions create awareness, and awareness changes everything. The empath woman finally realizes that constantly neglecting herself is not love. Self-abandonment. She understands that pouring endlessly into others while ignoring her own emotional needs creates deep inner imbalance. So, for the first time in a long time, she turns inward. She begins listening to herself again. She begins honoring her emotions instead of suppressing them. She begins protecting her peace instead of chasing approval. This is where transformation truly starts, not when the world changes, but when she changes the relationship she has with herself. A disciplined mind understands something powerful. The way you treat yourself teaches others how to treat you. If you constantly ignore your own boundaries, people will ignore them too. If you constantly sacrifice your peace for acceptance, others will expect access to your energy without responsibility. This is why self-choosing matters deeply. When an empath woman chooses herself, she no longer tolerates emotional disrespect simply because she fears loneliness. She no longer stays attached to situations that destroy her inner stability. She no longer seeks validation from people incapable of giving genuine love. Instead, she becomes grounded in self-awareness. This transformation is uncomfortable at first because growth always feels unfamiliar. People around her may resist the change. Those who benefited from her lack of boundaries may call her distant. Those who controlled her through guilt may accuse her of changing, but they are correct. She is changing. The woman who once over-explained herself becomes quieter. The woman who once chased connection becomes selective. The woman who once tolerated emotional chaos begins protecting her peace fiercely. And this change is necessary because a soul cannot heal in the same environment where it continuously suffers. An empath woman who chooses herself begins rebuilding her life differently. She becomes intentional with her energy. She spends more time in silence and reflection. She stops forcing relationships that no longer feel aligned with her spirit. For the first time, she understands that peace is more valuable than attention. This realization creates confidence. Not loud confidence based on ego, but calm confidence based on self-respect. She no longer needs constant reassurance because she begins trusting herself. She no longer feels desperate to be chosen because she already chose herself first. And this changes the energy she carries completely. There is something powerful about a woman who no longer begs for love. Her presence becomes calm. Her decisions become clearer. Her emotions become more stable because her happiness no longer depends entirely on external approval. This is inner strength. Many people search for transformation outside themselves. They search